If you think you don't have clutter, prove it. Open the drawer you avoid, check the folder on your computer you never touch, or look at the box you swore you'd deal with someday. Still think you're clutter-free? Most of us don't realize how many little piles we've tucked away, hoping they'll take care of themselves. But the truth is, clutter doesn't stay silent, it grows heavier every year we ignore it. And after 60, that hidden weight shows up everywhere, in our stress levels, in how much energy we have when we wake up, and even in the space we have to enjoy time with family. The good news? You don't need to tackle it all at once. You don't need a massive garage clean-out or a whole house makeover. 10 tiny, doable steps, so small you can start today, can make your home feel calmer, your routines feel lighter, and your days feel more peaceful before 2026 sneaks up on us. Imagine opening that drawer without dread, or turning on your phone without dozens of alerts demanding your attention. That's what these little shifts can do. And here's where you come in. Before we dive in, if this already struck a nerve, don't just hit that new hype button. YouTube lets you hype 3 videos a week, and every hype helps push seniors' voices higher. Subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors so you never miss the small, life-changing habits that bring real freedom. This is about more than decluttering, it's about taking back control of your time, your energy, and your peace of mind. Meet Joy Miller, 68, a grandmother from Michigan who thought she had her life in order. To anyone visiting her home, it looked just fine. The floors were swept, the living room was cozy, and the kitchen counters were clear enough to pass any quick inspection. Friends often said, "Joy, you're so organized," and she would smile politely. But behind those polite smiles, Joy knew the truth. There was a drawer in her kitchen so packed with old batteries, half-used tape rolls, and expired coupons that she never dared open it unless absolutely necessary. Her attic groaned under the weight of decades, boxes of Christmas ornaments, baby clothes from children now in their 40s, and stacks of books she hadn't touched in years. And when it came to her digital life, Joy's phone carried a silent burden, thousands of unread emails, notifications she never cleared, and apps she hadn't opened in years. She wasn't drowning in obvious mess, but the hidden clutter whispered at her from every corner. One day, while looking for a recipe card she was sure she had saved somewhere, Joy felt the weight of it all. It wasn't just the paper she couldn't find, it was the reminder of everything she hadn't dealt with, everything she kept putting off. That's when she realized clutter wasn't about being messy. It wasn't about piles on the floor or dishes in the sink. It was about the invisible load of unfinished business, the drawer you avoid, the boxes you pretend you'll sort someday, the notifications you swipe past but never resolve. Joy understood that the real burden was the constant reminder of what she hadn't faced. She decided she couldn't carry it into another year. Instead of waiting for a perfect weekend to tackle everything, she began to look for small, doable steps that wouldn't exhaust her or overwhelm her. And what she discovered surprised her. The tiniest shifts, the kind that take only minutes, created the biggest sense of relief. By breaking her habits down into practical actions, Joy found a way to turn hidden clutter into lasting freedom. These 10 tiny ways became her roadmap, and they are the same steps that can help anyone step into 2026 feeling lighter, freer, and more at peace. Way 1. Declutter your to-do list, not just your closet. Joy used to begin each morning the same way, sitting at her kitchen table with a pen and a long sheet of paper, determined to be productive. She would jot down everything that came to mind, vacuum the living room, call her daughter, clean the attic, sort out old clothes, bake something for Sunday, finish reading that book, maybe even try organizing her photo albums. By the time she was done writing, her list already felt like a mountain. Instead of motivating her, it drained her energy before the day even began. At 68, Joy found herself chasing tasks she could never finish, and every night she ended the day looking at unchecked boxes, feeling guilty for what she didn't get to, rather than proud of what she had managed. It wasn't that Joy was lazy. In fact, she often did more than most people her age. But she discovered that clutter isn't just about the things you see stacked in corners, it can live in your schedule too. Overstuffed lists were just another kind of hidden clutter. They filled her with the same sense of heaviness as the boxes in her attic. She realized she didn't need to conquer everything in one day. What she really needed was a way to make her days feel lighter, manageable, and achievable. So she tried something new. Instead of filling her page with endless shoulds, Joy asked herself one simple question each morning: what are the 3 things that matter most today? Some days it was practical, like paying a bill, returning one important call, and clearing off a single countertop. Other days it was personal, writing a letter to a friend, enjoying a walk around the block, or spending uninterrupted time with her grandson. Once she began to focus on 3 priorities, she noticed something powerful: she finished them. Not perfectly, not always quickly, but completely. For the first time in years, Joy ended her evenings with a sense of completion instead of guilt. She no longer stared at a page filled with unchecked boxes. She looked at her 3 priorities, smiled, and felt proud that she had honored her time and energy. Decluttering her to-do list became just as important as decluttering her closets, because it gave her peace at the end of the day and reminded her that life after 60 should be about living fully, not exhausting yourself trying to do it all. Way 2: the guilt drawer clean out. Joy had one drawer in her house that she never liked to open. To anyone else, it looked ordinary, just a spot where odds and ends landed. But to Joy, it was a drawer that carried quiet shame. Inside were birthday gifts she never used but kept because she felt guilty giving them away, a half-finished knitting project from years ago, and craft supplies she had bought with good intentions but never touched. Every time she opened that drawer, it whispered reminders of broken promises, wasted money, and projects left undone. She didn't just see clutter, she saw guilt staring back at her. For years, Joy avoided it. She would shuffle things around, close it quickly, and promise herself she would get to it someday. But someday never came, because the weight wasn't in the objects themselves, it was in the emotions attached to them. The drawer was small, but the guilt inside it made it feel enormous. One day, as she was searching for a pair of scissors buried in the mess, Joy felt something shift. She realized she wasn't keeping these things out of love, or even usefulness. She was keeping them because she was afraid to face the feeling of letting them go. So she set a new rule: every week, she would choose one item from the guilt drawer and release it. One week it was a scarf a friend had given her that she never wore. Another week it was a box of beads she had bought during a brief crafting phase but never used. At first, it felt uncomfortable, almost disrespectful to the person who had given her the gift or to her younger self who had once been enthusiastic about hobbies. But as the weeks went by, the discomfort gave way to relief. Joy began to notice that with each item she released, she wasn't just creating more space in a drawer, she was creating more space in her mind. The guilt faded, replaced with a quiet pride that she was finally dealing with what weighed her down. By the time she reached the bottom of the drawer, Joy no longer felt like she was carrying around invisible baggage. She discovered that sometimes, the most important decluttering you can do isn't about space at all, it's about freeing yourself from the shame of unfinished stories and letting yourself start fresh. Way 3: the voicemail purge. Joy never thought much about her voicemail inbox. It wasn't something she checked regularly. In fact, she often ignored the little red notification icon on her phone. Over time, those numbers grew. First it was 10 unheard messages, then 20, and eventually, when she finally looked, the count had climbed to 143. At first, she laughed at the number, but deep down she felt uneasy. Most of the messages were spam, telemarketers, or old appointment reminders that were long out of date. But each time she picked up her phone, the sight of that little number reminded her of all the things she had neglected. It wasn't just digital clutter, it was a constant whisper that she was behind. One afternoon, while waiting for her tea to steep, Joy decided to face it. She opened her voicemail app, scrolled through the endless list, and started deleting. One by one, messages disappeared. At first, she thought it would feel tedious, but something surprising happened. With each swipe, she felt lighter. The junk calls and irrelevant reminders had been quietly piling weight on her mind. By the time she deleted the 50th message, she realized she was smiling. She wasn't just cleaning her phone, she was reclaiming a piece of mental space she hadn't even noticed was missing. In less than half an hour, her voicemail was clear. For the first time in years, her phone didn't nag her with a backlog of unheard messages. And the relief was almost physical. Her phone felt lighter in her hand, and her thoughts felt clearer. She discovered that digital clutter, though invisible, can weigh as heavily as the boxes in her attic or the overstuffed drawers in her home. Joy also set a new habit for herself. She would check voicemail once a week and delete anything unnecessary immediately. No more letting numbers pile up into guilt. By turning what seemed like a tiny, almost silly task into a regular habit, she gave herself the gift of calm every time she picked up her phone. The voicemail purge wasn't just about emptying an inbox, it was about proving to herself that even the smallest digital messes, once cleared, can create a ripple of freedom in everyday life. Way 4. Reclaim invisible corners. For a long time, Joy believed she needed to tackle the biggest spaces first, the attic filled with boxes, the garage with its piles of tools, or the basement shelves sagging under old holiday decorations. But every time she thought about starting, the projects felt so overwhelming that she put them off for another day. What finally helped her break the cycle wasn't starting big, but starting small. She began with the places she almost never thought about, the hidden spots she walked past every day without noticing. Under the bed, she found dust, forgotten shoes, and even a box of letters she had meant to sort years ago. Behind one door, an umbrella and broken vacuum attachment leaned against the wall, ignored for ages. On the lowest shelf of her pantry, she discovered cans that were well past their expiration date. None of these spaces seemed important compared to her larger projects, but something surprising happened as she cleared them. Each invisible corner she reclaimed gave her a surge of relief. It was as if she had peeled away a layer of stress she didn't know she was carrying. Unlike the daunting thought of declutter the attic, focusing on a hidden corner gave Joy a quick win. She didn't need a whole weekend, just 10 or 15 minutes. And the effect was immediate. The space looked fresher, she could breathe easier, and she felt accomplished. She started to see a pattern. These invisible corners weren't just physical spaces, they were symbolic of all the little areas of life we ignore until they weigh us down. By making a habit of tackling one hidden spot each week, Joy built momentum without exhausting herself. Clearing behind doors, under sinks, and the bottoms of closets slowly transformed her home. More importantly, it changed how she felt in her space. She realized that freedom isn't always found in finishing the biggest projects. Sometimes it begins with clearing the places we pretend not to see, and in doing so, reclaiming the peace we didn't realize we had lost. Way 5. Unsubscribe from emotional clutter. Not all clutter sits on shelves or fills drawers. Some of the heaviest clutter sneaks into our lives through screens. For Joy, this became clear when she noticed how often she finished scrolling through her phone feeling drained instead of uplifted. She was part of several online groups, followed countless pages, and received daily updates that she didn't even enjoy anymore. Some groups were full of arguments, others spread constant negativity, and many posts simply made her feel like she wasn't doing enough or living the right way. At first, she told herself it didn't matter, just background noise. But over time, she realized that every time she picked up her phone, she braced herself for a wave of stress. One evening, after reading a particularly heated thread in one of her groups, Joy asked herself a simple question: why am I letting this stay in my life? She realized the same principle she used for physical decluttering applied here too: if something doesn't bring joy, purpose, or peace, it doesn't belong. So she gave herself permission to unsubscribe. She clicked "Leave Group" on the pages that brought arguments instead of encouragement. She unfollowed accounts that filled her feed with fear, drama, or comparison. Each click felt like setting down a burden she didn't need to carry. What surprised Joy most was how quickly she felt the difference. The very next morning, her feed looked different. Instead of negativity, she saw photos of her grandchildren, updates from friends she cared about, and gentle reminders from the few pages that truly inspired her. Her screen began to feel like a safe space again, something she could enjoy without dread. She no longer felt guilty for spending time online, because her digital world now reflected the kind of peace she wanted in her real world. By unsubscribing from emotional clutter, Joy discovered a truth many overlook. Decluttering isn't just about the objects in our homes, it's about guarding the energy we allow into our hearts. Removing what drains you opens space for what strengthens you, and sometimes, the most powerful decluttering happens with a single tap of unfollow. Way 6. Release expired responsibilities. Clutter isn't always stacked on shelves or hidden in closets, sometimes it shows up in our calendars. For years, Joy had been part of a local women's club. In the beginning, it was exciting. She loved the meetings, the projects, and the friendships. But over time, the group changed, and so did Joy. The meetings grew longer, the projects no longer interested her, and the energy she once gained from attending turned into exhaustion. Still, she kept showing up every month, telling herself, "I've been doing this for so long, I can't just quit now." It became a habit, something she did automatically even though her heart wasn't in it anymore. One afternoon, while rushing to prepare snacks for yet another meeting she didn't want to attend, Joy stopped and asked herself, "Why am I still doing this?" The answer was simple: obligation. She was afraid of disappointing others, of being judged, of admitting she had outgrown the group. But deep down, she knew the responsibility had expired. It no longer added value to her life, and holding on to it was no different than keeping a box of things she would never use again. With a deep breath, Joy made the decision to step away. She politely told the group that she was grateful for the years she had shared but needed to move on. To her surprise, the world didn't collapse. No one was angry. In fact, some members quietly admitted they had felt the same way. Walking away didn't mean failure, it meant freedom. The relief Joy felt was immediate. It reminded her of the rush she experienced when she finally cleared out her garage. The heavy, lingering weight suddenly lifted. By releasing this responsibility, she made space for things she truly enjoyed, like gardening, visiting her grandchildren, and even starting a new hobby she had been curious about for years. She realized that just like physical clutter, responsibilities have an expiration date. What once fit perfectly into your life may no longer serve you today. Letting them go isn't selfish, it's necessary. For Joy, releasing expired responsibilities gave her back time, energy, and joy, proving that decluttering your schedule can be as life-changing as decluttering your home. Way 7. The 20-minute memory lane. For decades, Joy avoided her attic. It wasn't because it was dusty or because the stairs were hard to climb, it was because of the boxes. Stacks of photo albums, scrapbooks, loose pictures tucked into envelopes, and fading Polaroids from the 70s sat waiting for her. Every time she thought about going through them, her chest grew heavy. The memories weren't painful, in fact, they were precious. But there were simply too many. Birthdays with cake-smeared faces, vacations with her late husband, handwritten notes from old friends, baby pictures of her children now grown with families of their own. Each photo carried a story, and the thought of deciding which ones to keep and which ones to release felt like an impossible burden. In her mind, letting go of a photo meant letting go of a person, a season, or a piece of herself. So she avoided it year after year, telling herself there would be more time, someday. One Saturday afternoon, something shifted. Instead of promising herself a whole weekend to finally tackle the attic, Joy decided to try something small. She set a simple 20-minute timer on her phone. Her goal wasn't to finish, but just to start. She brought down one box, made herself a cup of tea, and sat in her favorite chair. For 20 minutes, she allowed herself to enjoy the pictures. She laughed at her daughter's awkward middle school haircuts, smiled at vacation snapshots where she and her husband looked so young and carefree, and even let herself cry gently as she held a picture of her late parents. When the timer rang, she was surprised. she felt lighter, not heavier. For the first time, she realized she could honor her memories without being buried by them. But joy didn't stop there. After enjoying the photos, she took a second step. She chose a handful of true favorites, the ones that instantly filled her heart with gratitude, and set them aside. The rest she thanked, then released. Some she gave to her children, others she let go of completely. Slowly, the endless boxes began to shrink into smaller, meaningful collections. What once felt like an attic of guilt transformed into a space of joy. The 20-minute memory lane became a weekly ritual. Each week, she'd set her timer, pull out a few photos, and repeat the process. What had once been a dreaded task turned into something she looked forward to, a moment of reflection, a chance to remember, and a practice in gratitude. Decluttering her memories no longer felt like loss, it felt like choosing to carry forward the best parts of her life. By the time months passed, Joy discovered she hadn't lost her history, she had made it easier to treasure. Way 8, the 24-hour box. One of Joy's biggest struggles in decluttering wasn't knowing what she loved, it was wrestling with the constant question, but what if I need this later? Every time she picked up an item, whether it was a kitchen gadget, an old coat, or a stack of greeting cards, she found herself frozen. She didn't want to keep it, but she also wasn't ready to let it go. That uncertainty kept her stuck. Instead of moving forward, she ended up putting the object right back where it came from, promising herself she'd decide later. And so, the clutter lived on. One day, Joy came across a simple idea that changed everything, the 24-hour box. She took a medium-sized container, labeled it clearly, and made a rule for herself. Whenever she found an item she was unsure about, instead of putting it back, she placed it into the box. The rule was simple: if she didn't reach for that item within 24 hours, it was a sign she didn't truly need it. Once the time passed, the item left her home for good, either donated, recycled, or tossed. At first, Joy was nervous. She dropped in a sweater she hadn't worn in years but kept, just in case. She put in a second can opener she never used and a few kitchen utensils that seemed handy once but had sat untouched for months. 24 hours passed, and she never thought about them again. For the first time, the decision felt easy. Instead of agonizing over, someday, she had proof: if she didn't miss it in a day, she wouldn't miss it at all. The 24-hour box quickly became her best tool against second-guessing. It wasn't just about clearing items, it was about clearing the mental tug-of-war that clutter created. Every time she dropped something in, she felt lighter, knowing she had given herself permission to let go without guilt. And as the habit grew, Joy realized something bigger: decluttering wasn't about rushing decisions, it was about creating simple systems that gave her clarity. By the time months passed, dozens of items had moved from the 24-hour box out of her home. Her kitchen drawers opened smoothly, her closets had breathing room, and her shelves looked intentional rather than crowded. More importantly, Joy learned that letting go didn't have to be complicated. Sometimes, freedom begins with a single box, a single rule, and the courage to stop second-guessing. Way 9, declutter while standing, not sitting. Joy used to sit at her dining table whenever she attempted to sort through piles of paper, mail, and old magazines. At first, it seemed like the most comfortable way to get things done. But within minutes, she noticed her energy would sink. Sitting made her slower, more distracted, and far more likely to start reminiscing instead of making decisions. She would pick up an old letter, start reading it, and suddenly 30 minutes had gone by with nothing accomplished. The stack in front of her never seemed to shrink, and every time she got up, she felt frustrated with herself. Then she tried something different. One afternoon, instead of pulling up a chair, she remained standing. She placed the stack of papers on the counter and told herself she would just handle it for 10 minutes. Almost immediately, the experience shifted. Standing kept her body engaged, her shoulders upright, her energy sharper, her mind focused. Instead of lingering on every detail, she made faster choices: keep, shred, or recycle. The process felt less like a burden and more like movement. She even realized she was walking back and forth across the room, putting things in their proper places, which gave her the bonus of light exercise. What seemed like a tiny adjustment, standing instead of sitting, gave her back a sense of control. Joy moved faster, hesitated less, and actually enjoyed the rhythm of sorting. When she finished, she didn't feel weighed down by indecision. She felt accomplished. And the sense of accomplishment mattered more than the size of the pile she had cleared, because it gave her motivation to do it again tomorrow. Decluttering while standing became one of Joy's secret weapons. It reminded her that the way we position ourselves physically can shape how we feel mentally. By making the process active rather than passive, she broke the cycle of stalling and self-criticism. What once felt like an endless, draining chore became an energizing routine. For Joy, it proved that sometimes the smallest shift in approach creates the biggest difference in results. Way 10. Clean as a gift, not a chore. For much of her life, Joy thought of cleaning as a never-ending cycle of work. Wiping counters, folding laundry, dusting shelves, it always felt like a duty that waited for her at the end of each day, a punishment for living in her own space. Even after retirement, when she had more time, she caught herself sighing before starting any kind of cleaning task. To her, it was simply something that had to be done, not something she wanted to do. That mindset left her drained and resentful, even though she loved the comfort of a clean home. One morning, while making her bed, Joy stopped and looked at the smooth sheets. For a moment, she imagined how she would feel climbing into that bed at night, how grateful she would be to have a space that welcomed her instead of greeting her with wrinkles and chaos. That's when it clicked. Cleaning wasn't just a chore for the present moment. It was a gift to her future self. Every dish washed tonight meant waking up to a clear kitchen in the morning. Every surface wiped down today meant a calmer, fresher mood tomorrow. She realized she wasn't working against herself, she was setting herself up for peace. This small shift in perspective changed everything. Joy started to approach daily tasks differently. Folding laundry became a way of thanking herself for tomorrow's order. Sweeping the floor wasn't drudgery, it was preparing the stage for a lighter mood the next day. Even scrubbing the bathroom, once her most dreaded job, turned into an act of care for her future comfort. The work itself didn't change, what changed was the way she viewed it. And with that new mindset, she discovered she had more motivation, not less. Cleaning as a gift also gave her back a sense of pride. Instead of feeling weighed down by endless chores, she began to see herself as someone who actively created calm and beauty in her own life. The satisfaction no longer came only from the result but from knowing she was caring for herself in advance. For Joy, cleaning stopped being a punishment and became an expression of self-love, one small action today that made tomorrow brighter, lighter, and infinitely more peaceful. By the time 2026 came into view, Joy's home told a very different story. Rooms that once felt crowded now breathed with openness. Drawers closed without resistance, closets no longer overflowed, and the buzzing weight of digital notifications had quieted to almost nothing. But the most powerful change wasn't in the way her house looked, it was in the way she felt. For the first time in years, Joy no longer carried the invisible weight of unfinished tasks, half-kept promises to herself, or boxes she was afraid to open. She realized that clutter had never just been about objects, it had been about guilt, regret, and the pressure of someday. When those layers disappeared, so did the heaviness in her heart. Joy found that everyday moments became easier and more joyful. She could walk into her kitchen and cook without frustration. She could sit in her living room and feel peace instead of scanning shelves full of things she didn't need. She could pick up her phone and smile instead of feeling nagged by endless alerts. The freedom she gained wasn't dramatic or flashy, it was steady, quiet, and deeply satisfying. It gave her back time, energy, and the space to say yes to what she truly wanted, more time with her grandchildren, new hobbies, and the calm to rest without guilt. Her journey revealed a truth that every senior deserves to hear. After 60, clutter is not just about what fills your shelves or storage bins. It is about the weight it places on your time, your mind, and your heart. Letting go doesn't mean erasing your past, it means making room for the life you still want to live. Each small decision to release what no longer serves you becomes a doorway to joy. If these steps opened your eyes, don't just hype this video right now so more seniors can discover the freedom that comes with letting go. Share it with a friend or family member who is ready to make a change, and subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors for more guidance on living lighter and freer. Because life after 60 isn't about holding on, it's about creating space for what matters most, and embracing every new day with clarity, dignity, and peace.